Hello, everyone. Welcome to Neon Rebels Building a Rebellion. Today I'm joined by Irish electropop troublemaker Robbie Says. Robbie's originally from Wexford in Ireland, now based in London. He's an electronic performance artist. You might know some of his singles from Favourite Feelings, Girl, and Conditioned, as well as our own cover of Danny Minogue's I Begin to Wonder. Some of our collaborations and remixes have also reached the top 10 on Beatport and have done the rounds at Ministry of Sound. Robbie is also one of my closest friends. So, today on the episode, we're going to be talking about self releasing and the benefits and challenges of being an independent artist. Welcome to the pod, Robbie Says. So, Robbie Says, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. Maybe if we can just start off with you talking a bit more about your musical journey and just what kind of music you make.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I started singing when I was very young in the choir. I was a choir boy, and I've always loved to sing. I never really felt like I could do it or was good enough to do it as a career until I was a bit older. So I really came into making music when I was about 30. So I started to make music and perform when I went to uni.
Yep.
So I went to uni as a mature student
Hmm.
to a school called BIM,
Hmm.
British and Irish Modern Music Institute. That's where I met my first collaborators
Hmm.
and started writing and producing my own work. And that's when I first started gigging properly. I think I must have done like 50 gigs within the last kind of 2 years
Hmm.
of uni. Then after uni, it was not too long after uni was the dreaded COVID.
Hmm.
So I had some plans to write an album and perform with my band after uni, but then COVID hit.
Hmm.
So I had to rethink how was I going to survive and make music, continue making music without being able to be in person with
Hmm.
my collaborators and my band. So I then started producing music myself electronically. I've always loved electronic music and I didn't really feel empowered to do it or never really considered doing it seriously
Hmm.
until COVID times when everything just changed and it was like, how do I continue and progress? And so I released a couple of songs, as you know, we collaborated together on some remixes. So I had a couple of singles out and
Mm.
remixes out throughout and after COVID and performed a bit. I've had a bit of a break for a while just to be an adult and
Mhm.
sort my professional life out. I'm a music teacher. Will be training to become a music therapist soon. But I always had intended to come back to
Mhm.
making music and performing when it felt right. And I'm kind of in that place now. I'm currently working on music again.
Mhm.
So that's my journey.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm also a mature student, so I
Yes.
know how that can be difficult. But what made you decide to start self-releasing instead of going after a label or signing?
To be honest, I would have preferred to have been with the label if I'd had options and choice.
Mhm.
And I did reach out and I did try. It was a case of at the time not really having any other option but to self-release, if I'm being completely honest.
Mhm.
And um I think there are pros and cons to that, which I'm sure we're going to discuss. But it was a case of not really having any other option. I did have some responses from labels and things throughout my time releasing, saying a couple of them being very kind of complimentary and saying this is really interesting what you're doing. But ultimately, I think they didn't really elaborate on that.
Mhm.
But the impression that I got was either that it wasn't something that they were pushing or that they resonated with, or I didn't have the numbers. And
Mhm.
that's a big thing I think in the kind of modern
Mhm.
music industry is you can't really get those chances or opportunities unless you're showing them that you have growth or
Mhm.
fans or followers or whatever that is yourself already.
Mhm.
So I didn't have that when I started out. So I chose to self-release.
It's such a shame because, as people will know by now, that you're a very close friend of mine. I've seen how you perform and your writing, and it's always so sincere. And I always struggle to understand why a label hadn't picked you. And it is true, like people just solely focus on the numbers. Labels no longer nurture talent. And I find that also some of these artists that are coming out that say that they are new finds, or people that are just coming to the forefront. Olivia Dean, for instance,
Mm.
she was already with thousands and thousands of followers, with a
Yeah,
huge fan base already, that then a
yeah,
label just plucked up and
yeah.
took it to mainstream. So that I think we'll talk about gatekeeping in a little bit, but let's maybe focus a bit more on the reality of self-releasing, and how did you go about doing that? What was that process like for you?
I chose to release through DistroKid as uh, a, an aggregator. I looked at some other services. Speaking of gatekeeping, I looked at some other services that some successful artists are a part of. But again, it was it's a selection process.
Hmm.
With DistroKid, I can just sign up and pay my subscription and they'll release my music for me. But there's no service around
Hmm.
that. With other services that are distributors,
Hmm.
that have a more of a kind of an artist management and a distribution element to it as well, to help you, to elevate you when you're
Hmm.
releasing music. That is more of a gate kept thing.
Hmm.
And probably I would imagine I was refused twice for one of those services. And I would imagine it's probably the same thing. It's whether or not you can demonstrate that you have traction
Hmm.
already. And that's not to take away from the talent of these artists, of course, but I feel like the industry now wants to they want a more safe bet because it's
Hmm.
driven by money, isn't it? So they
Yeah.
want someone who is already going to have a fan base to sell to. I think the aggregators are a really good option if you are starting off and you don't have the support of a label and you don't have a kind of a marketing budget,
Hmm.
because you can get your music out there. I just think you should manage your expectations when you are releasing music
Hmm.
in that way without a
Hmm.
budget and without much of a following. But it's a brilliant option, and my music is still up there
Hmm.
today, the music that I initially released.
How does the contracting work then? Do they you just sign up, pay the monthly fee? Is there any sort of contract, or do they tell you how much they keep, or what
So
percentage ends up with you?
So DistroKid specifically, I've actually only ever released to them, so I can't speak to
Hmm.
any other aggregator service. But DistroKid, it's not a contract; it's purely an annual
Hmm.
subscription that you pay, and that just keeps your music rolling through
Hmm.
on all of the major kind of streaming platforms and some smaller
Hmm.
ones. I probably have made, from all of the music that I've released, and I haven't had many streams obviously since I stopped releasing or promoting my work.
Hmm.
Probably made about £250 over the course of maybe 2 years,
Hmm.
which is something
That's
with
not
no
bad.
marketing budget. But
Exactly.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
is realistic.
Hmm.
And one of my streams, probably my highest streaming single, is our collaboration on the remix of Girl. I think that
Hmm.
had 22,000 streams. So the majority of that probably came
Hmm.
from that, because I wrote the song
Hmm.
myself. So any stream of that, whether it's a remix or not, would have
Hmm.
come to me. So I would imagine most of that £250 is probably from that. My other tracks are probably on, some of them are less
Hmm.
than 1,000 streams. So I'm probably not really making anything from
Hmm.
those at all. Maybe a matter of pence.
So let's talk about the struggles then of not having a label to back you. You work three jobs. You've trying to survive as an artist. Like what has that been like for you?
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
I am in a good place with my relationship to it all now, because I've been through the experience of doing it and I've learned a lot, and especially having a break from it all for the last number of years. uh, and just doing some work on myself to like build my confidence and things like that. I can understand that it's not a reflection of me and my talents, and that it's purely a matter of business and money, and if you don't have the money and the backing, it's more difficult. And
Mhm.
this is one thing I loved my experience in uni in BIM. I had a brilliant time. I met a lot of amazing artists and worked with a lot of amazing people and made some lifelong friends. I just wish they had prepared us for the realities of what it's like to self-release. I think that might have been a bit of an oversight. It's a brilliant degree and it's a brilliant university. I enjoyed my experience. However, I don't feel like a realistic picture was painted
Mhm.
of that daily grind,
Mhm.
because there were opportunities through the uni. They had connections, and you could audition for certain positions and opportunities in the industry,
Mhm.
but that was hugely promoted in the marketing before you joined
Mhm.
the uni. There weren't that many opportunities, and I
Mhm.
think I had a picture in my head. Maybe that's my own naivety at the time, but I had a picture in my head that I was just going to go to uni and become a star,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And that's not really how it panned out for, I'd say, 90% of the people
Mhm.
in my class, because most of us felt
Mhm.
that that's what was going to happen when we started uni.
I remember when you joined, you
You
had
know,
such great expectations
yeah,
of the outcomes, and
yeah,
then you hit with the reality.
yeah.
Um, so just to go back to DistroKid just for a second, I remember essentially having a problem with them with like reaching out to support even through that distributor. Do you remember how that was, or what that issue was, and how did you resolve it?
Yeah, and I think that might have been specifically with one of our
Hmm.
remixes. I haven't had many problems with my own kind of original releases, because everything was kind of
Hmm.
you put in all the information at the
Hmm.
submission time, and then you have to give them a certain, like, they say a month before,
Hmm.
so everything can be checked and then rechecked before it goes live, and everything has been fine with all of those releases. And sometimes when I have had to chase things up, it's been swift enough
Hmm.
response. However, with Beatport, because they aggregate through
Hmm.
DistroKid, and their setup works in a different way, that was really difficult,
Hmm.
because it's not a platform I'm familiar with, and I contacted them directly and
Hmm.
they said I had to go back through
Yeah.
DistroKid, and they weren't able to work together because they have different setups and different platforms. So that
Mm.
was quite difficult.
Mhm.
So I didn't have that support, and I had to kind of chase that up myself.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're an artist with a label backing or with a distribution team,
Mhm.
you might not even hear about most of that stuff because someone is doing that for you. But when you're doing it all yourself, it can be quite difficult.
Yeah. No, I bet. I bet. So go back to your time at BIM, you graduated. When we were chatting, you often were talking about these tastemakers or these gatekeepers that maybe have held you and some of your other graduates back. Tell me a bit more about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that is the case with labels and services like that, which I understand, because obviously they have access to huge pools of contacts and distribution services and all of those things. So they want to ensure that they're going with a safe bet and an established artist. I do understand that model. My biggest red flags, and I don't even know if they registered with me at the time, but there are some services, for example, I went through a phase of thinking if I released music and got uh, a magazine or an online kind of music publication to write about my release, that could be a way to build a fan base, or get some traction, or get the word out there.
Mhm.
And I contacted a lot of these magazines directly. I had spreadsheets and galore and all of that. I tried to be organized about that. I got very few responses, but there were some services, I don't know if they still exist, who would charge you. You would have to pay, and then they would submit your release to these online publications with a kind of a promise of them then writing about your
Mhm.
music with no guarantee. I never paid because I did get some valuable advice in uni, and it was like, do not pay for a journalist or a music publication to write that.
Mhm.
You don't pay for promotion in that way.
Mhm.
Maybe it's different online with social media and stuff. Because at the time it was all like Facebook ads and stuff.
Mhm.
I did a little bit of that and it for gigs and stuff, and it did work. But I was advised to never pay for a journalist or a magazine or a music
Mhm.
service to write about your music. So that would be advice I would give because there's no guarantee. You don't
Mhm.
even know if they have those contacts. And also they're not writing about your music because they like your music.
Yeah.
They're writing about it because they're being paid. And that's
Mhm.
not what you want. You want it to be genuine if you're going to get any kind of
Mm.
shout outs in that way, I think.
Something that I've just been thinking about, you've been lucky enough to also perform live at various venues, including Brighton Pride in a big festival. I've come to see you many times in really intimate settings. Was that process like for you? Or trying to find a venue, getting the venue booked? I'm sure that some of our listeners might be really interesting, an up and coming artist trying to get a venue to play at.
You know what? Brighton Pride actually was. I'll give them that. I'm gonna start that service. I don't wanna say I'll give them that. Edit that out. Brighton Pride was actually an opportunity that I got through BIM.
Hmm.
So I applied for that, and there were a number of other artists up for that kind of slot, and
Hmm.
I managed to get one of the slots on one of the main stages at Brighton Pride, which is a huge kind of gay pride festival in Brighton. So that was one brilliant opportunity that I got through BIM. In terms of gigs in general, most of the ones that I uh, played were through a process of contacting the venue directly and probably not getting paid for the gig most of the time if they ever responded. Probably not getting paid for the gig, which is preferable to them charging you, which happens mostly through promoters. The
Yeah.
venues themselves I found were quite good. At the very least, you probably wouldn't be getting any money for the gig. You'd probably be doing it for free. But a lot of the promoters were, again, trying to get you to pay them
Hmm.
for you to just do what you're doing
Hmm.
when you're actually bringing however many fans that might be. Like if I was bringing even 20 people who are buying tickets,
Hmm.
it's probably a weeknight gig. It's probably empty. You're bringing people into their venue. You're giving that promoter money. But a lot of them would be asking you to give them such a huge cut or sell a certain amount of tickets. And
Hmm.
this is and I had a band of like 5 people. So I felt like I had to, whatever I got, if I got 20 quid, I would split that with them because
Hmm.
they're given at the time when we were in uni, my collaborators and my bandmates were working with me for free because that's what we all did. We
Hmm.
weren't making any money from music. We were all students. So I felt like any little tiny bit of money that I made, I would split with them and they wouldn't want to take it, but I was like, it's only fair.
Hmm.
And it was never much. I'd say maximum 50 quid.
Hmm.
And then that was split.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how it was. But some of them, I did do some gigs that were kind of like pay to play vibes.
Hmm.
There were some promoters. If you look online, you will find um, that the dodgy promoters are reviewed by artists. So if you're
Hmm.
ever unsure, just Google them because there will probably be a raft of independent artists who've been burned by them
Hmm.
if they're not above board. So that's one thing I learned early on as well because yeah, sometimes there's really good gigs that you're like, I have to do this, or they're gatekeeping that
Hmm.
gig from me, so I have to do it. But then there were some dodgy deals
Hmm.
or unreasonable deals, and then I would just look online and it'd be like, okay, they're either not going to pay you or they're going to be hounding
Yeah.
you, chasing you to get people to buy tickets. So yeah.
I've had my fair share of dodgy promoters,
Yes.
having to sell tickets like minimum of like 100, whatever.
Yeah.
putting the ticket link, having to do paid promotion for certain promoters, well-known names that remain nameless on this podcast, um, and just yeah, maybe turning up at venues and then being promised that this would be like a huge gig and that they've sold out, and then coming there and they'd only sold like 10 tickets,
Oh,
and then being
right.
promised to be paid and not being paid at all. So it's happened to me as well.
Oh, you
Um,
got paid. That's
uh,
nice.
well, yeah,
Must
like
be
you, like
nice.
probably just 20 quid in the end. But yeah, there's plenty of dodgy promoters out there. But one thing that I took away from seeing you perform is that you love to perform. I can tell you get so much out of it. Has that been a drive to get back into music? Have you been remembering those moments?
Yeah, it has. And I had a period of a couple of years where I wasn't interested at all. I wasn't interested in writing. I
Hmm.
wasn't feeling drawn to write anything or express anything. And I wouldn't say it was fear, but I was feeling a huge hesitance about performing again because I feel like the way I performed and presented myself in the past has I've evolved and
Hmm.
changed since that. And I think when I was in uni and when I was first releasing music, I was figuring things out. I was figuring out the kind of person I was, figuring out the kind of artist that I am and what I wanted to kind of put out there. And I feel like I don't really resonate with that as much now. I forget what the question was.
No, no, no. I mean that is a brilliant answer. That is a brilliant
But
answer.
did you say about coming back to it?
Yeah. So what?
Yes.
So now that you're rethinking
Yes.
about performing again, like how's that going? Like what's coming up?
Yes. So I feel like having had the experiences that I've had and knowing realistically what the chances are going to be of selling out
Hmm.
a gig or like having huge numbers on a single if I were to release independently. I feel like understanding that now is it has been valuable for me because now that I'm writing again, and now that I'm looking to hopefully perform again very soon, it's going to be for me.
Hmm.
It's not going to be with this dream of being discovered or
Hmm.
be because that would be that is the dream. I would love to be able to support myself with my music.
Hmm.
That is ultimately the dream. But I don't think that that should be the sole reason why you're doing it.
Hmm.
And my advice, I suppose, would be if you are going to release music independently, is just to understand that and
Hmm.
understand your own reasons for doing it.
Hmm. No, fantastic. As you know, I'm building Neon Rebels,
Oh
which
yeah.
is going to be a queer led
I've heard.
grassroots label. Yeah, we've been talking about it a fair bit. Do you think that was something that would have helped you back then if there was like a community label around to support you?
Absolutely. I think that's what I was kind of craving at the time. And there wasn't anything really like that existed.
Hmm.
I think that would have been really valuable because regardless of whether you're searching for, as I was saying, the numbers or the exposure or whatever that might be, I feel like to have a community around you to kind of support you and experience those things with you or advise you, speak to this person or contact this person or I've used this person and they're good.
Hmm.
I'd never really had that. I had to make all the mistakes myself and I learned a lot, but it was quite lonely, to be
Hmm.
honest. So it would have been really valuable to me, yeah.
Yeah, so what we're doing is basically setting this up as an online community. We're doing these podcasts to share learnings. We're going to have an event in March, which will be a showcase of some talent, just in case you might be available. Um, and we're hoping to have a few releases out on the label, hopefully by summer. We're giving a date around Pride, but the whole ethos is community for the community by the community, and I really want that to be the ethos of the label. The whole rebellion piece is like really standing up for our rights
Yeah.
and for us to be heard and for our underrepresented voices to be heard. How do you think community is for independent artists and our community?
I think community is everything. And I think especially having a queer collective or a community of fellow queer artists is really valuable
Mhm,
because not only, as I was saying, can they advise you on using this photographer or using this lawyer or using this service or whatever, but they've also been through what you've been through,
mhm.
both as an artist but as a person as well. I think it's really important.
No, definitely. I'm thinking of like maybe also collaborating with other queer businesses. So you've got London Sound Academy who teach people how to DJ, music production. They also have their own photographers. I know loads of producers that already work with loads of queer artists that are happy to open up their calendar to up and coming artists or to give advice. There's venues that are craving for daytime artists
Mhm.
that want to know who's coming up. So I feel like this is all bringing things together, hopefully.
Nice.
So let's move on to maybe advice and takeaways. You've given a few pointers, which have been fantastic to hear. But if you were to speak to an up and coming artist today, what advice would you give them?
Again, I think it would be just understand your reasons for doing it.
Hmm.
Like, what is it that you want to get out of writing a piece of music or performing? What are you trying to say?
Hmm.
I think that's the most important thing. Because I think one thing that being independent gave me was the freedom
Hmm.
to follow my own kind of artistic urges in a way. Because I was doing some quite wild things aesthetically. I don't know that I would have had the freedom to do that if I were to be with the label, and it probably would have affected my sound in
Hmm.
a way. So if you are independent and you really feel that you have to release music, that is something that you need to do for your soul, it's in a way there is some freedom there. So maybe use that time that you're independent, that you have that freedom to really solidify what it is that you want to say
Hmm.
and what it is that you're about. Because that once you know that, then you can't be shaken from that.
Hmm.
I think had I as I said as well, I was a mature student when I went to music uni. So I was already 30 when I started making music properly. So I had already established myself. I
Hmm.
think had I been launching when I was 20, I probably would have been molded
Hmm.
because I didn't know who I was. So I think that's the advice I would give is just understand why you're doing it and be strong in who you are and maybe take that time when you don't have the pressure or the exposure to understand that and
Hmm.
understand who you are.
And experiment with your
Experiment,
sound.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's really
exactly.
great advice. So we're going to move on to a quick fire round. I'm going to
Okay.
ask you this or that.
Okay.
Um, are you ready?
Sure. Yes, I'm ready.
Kylie or Danny?
I know you're gonna hate this answer.
Oh,
Kylie, I'm really sorry.
that's fine. I'll let you off. Independent or signed?
Can I give it more than a one-word answer?
We've known each other for a long time.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
I think signed, but in the right opportunity
Hmm.
with freedom.
Okay.
Support, but freedom. And there are labels that do that.
Hmm.
There are
Absolutely.
labels that are independent in ethos, but are huge in scope and in contacts and distribution and all of that. So I absolutely would have been signed
Hmm.
to the right opportunity if I'd had a choice.
Fantastic.
Signed.
Gem and the Holograms or the Misfits?
I think the Misfits. There's just something
We
really
won't go into
cheeky and like
detail.
kind of like lovable about them, even though they're scamps.
They're absolutely crazy. That's absolutely an in-joke for both of us. So apologies. Studio or live?
I think live.
Mhm,
Because on the occasions where I have been lucky enough, again through BIM and most of the opportunities to perform in front of a big audience, were my kind of proudest and most exciting moments because there's something about when a room is full and you're just there within the expressing yourself, but I suppose within the safety and confines of a
mhm,
song. So you've got a specific message that you're trying to say. Like talking, you know, I use a lot of words in a conversation, but when you're singing, when you're performing that piece of music, there's
mhm,
an intent for that piece of music. And there's something for me very safe about that
mhm.
because it's already defined, I suppose, to a degree.
Mhm. No,
Again, not a one word answer.
no, no, no. Don't worry. Don't
Live,
worry.
live.
Yeah, pop or indie?
That's difficult
I know.
because, well, what is pop, first of
Mhm,
all, and what is indie? Both of them. Indie, I'd say, is a different one because obviously indie, when it started out, was
mhm,
actually independent. And they were discovering bands literally from a dive bar and being like,
mhm,
here's a record deal. That's not what it is anymore.
mhm,
Or depending on your definition of it. Pop is the same though. What is your definition of pop?
mhm,
Because there are so many artists I love that are popular that are not pop.
mhm,
But I would probably have to say pop because again, the definition, but the definition of indie for me is not when I was a teenager, like
mhm.
Radiohead and Nirvana and stuff like that. Like I would have loved those indie bands back then, but that's not what indie is now.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So I
totally
love
agree.
rock and I love independent artists and alternative artists, but I'd have to say pop
Okay. Writing lyrics or producing beats?
lyrics.
Yeah, you are very good lyricist.
Thanks.
Glitter or leather?
Oh gosh, probably leather.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah,
thought you would have
because
said
she's
glitter.
messy. Glitter is messy.
That is true.
Is it biodegradable?
Yes, yes. House or disco?
Hmm, that's also difficult. Although I think it's easier to define those
Mhm.
2.
The one led to the
But
other.
actually, yeah, that's difficult. Oh. Oh god, I don't know because I don't want to denounce one or the
You could
other.
say both.
I think
Both.
both
Yeah, that's fine. That's
because
fine.
there are differences and there are kind of essential similarities that
Mhm.
led like disco
Mm.
birthed house,
No, I
didn't it?
I totally agree.
Do you
I
know what I
can't
mean?
I could never separate both. As you know from my sets, I play both
Yes.
if I can. Okay, here's a difficult one for you. One word to describe your visual aesthetic.
Oh god, it's hard to find one word. Can you help me describe it? So I'd say I'm a mixture of slick and
Mhm.
messy.
I love that.
But what is one word to
Yeah.
define that? Because I'm both.
One of your
Look at this hair.
outfits
No.
just still like you used to wear a blazer, this blue blazer. I used
Mm.
to love that. You did the octopus outfit, which I thought was
Jellyfish.
jellyfish, apologies.
If that's even what
Apologies.
it was some creature,
It was stunning. I loved it. But
some
this
sea
is what I mean,
creature.
performance artists, that kind of stuff I thought was really exciting. So last question that I'm asking all of my guests.
Yes.
So it's a really dark place out there at the moment. What is it that you're hopeful for you as an artist and for the queer community?
I would just say freedom
Hmm.
from the definitions and kind of restrictions and
Hmm.
expectations for people within the queer community and in general in wider society for men because I
Hmm.
think that's what's caused a lot of the problems that we have within certain areas of our community is people being feeling boxed into ideas of
Hmm.
masculinity and other things like that
Hmm.
and I hope that the queer community can be free of that. I hope that wider society can be
Hmm.
free of that.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. So Robbie Says, where can everybody find you?
I'm on Instagram at Robbie Says Music.
Mhm.
I'm on Facebook, same name. And I'm not on TikTok yet, but you might see me on there soon. I'm
Oh,
feeling like it's time.
it's time to go to the dark side.
Yes.
Robbie, thank you so much for coming. I
Thank
really
you very
appreciate
much
it.
for having me. Thank
Thank
you.
you.